I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support.
Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary, and welcome back to another episode of Books My Boyfriend Gave Me. Now this episode is going to be a series edition. I'm going to be talking about the Kingdom Keepers series by Ridley Pearson, a series as a whole. Now I've had an individual video about each one of the books, and now I'm going to talk about the series as a whole. So a spoiler-free synopsis of this series. We have, I think it's 5 teenagers who have been selected to be DHIs, which are Disney Host Interactives or Digital Host Interactives. Basically, the Imagineers at Disney discovered a way to use technology and these kids to create holograms of these kids. And during the day, the holograms will go around and give guests tours of the different parks. At night, the Imagineers found a way to use the kids while they're sleeping to have them transition over into the park. They called it crossing over. So then the kids, as DHIs, could fight the Disney villains that are trying to take over the parks and trying to instill essentially dark magic and black magic into the Disney parks and the world instead of the light Disney magic. It was a really unique idea. I really love this premise because I've never seen anything like this premise before. Using DHIs, holograms, as tour guides is something that, you know, you hear a lot about in science fiction, but to use them to fight evil is, I feel like, so unique. It was so fun to see all of the different Disney tie-ins and the Disney characters come together in all of these different books. Were a lot of fun. My favorite book in the series was book 7, the last book in the series, but actually the first book that I read. This was the one book that John actually gave me. The rest of the books we either got from a different library, a school library, or the public library. This was the first book that I read and my first introduction to this idea and these characters. And although I don't necessarily recommend starting a series in the last book because it's very confusing, out of all of the books, now that I've read the whole series, this book I actually enjoyed the most. It felt like it had the best running plot line. The characters just felt very realistic to me, and you had like an overload of Disney characters in this, and I feel like a book produced by Disney, taking place in Disney parks, deserves as many Disney characters as you can do. My least favorite is actually the first book. I enjoyed all of the books, but I think part of my problem with the first book is that because I read the other books first, some stuff in the first book did not make sense because it contradicted stuff in other books. Different things that characters were doing, even different characters. It was very confusing and it took me a while to get used to. I still gave it 3 out of 5 stars because I still really enjoyed it, but it was the least favorite. One of the other things that I liked about these books was just about each one took place in a different Disney property. You had Magic Kingdom, you had Epcot, Animal Kingdom, you had the parks at the park over at in California. You had Disney World and Disneyland. You had the Disney Cruise. You had Hollywood Studios. You just had all of these different parks, and it was so exciting. I don't know, I just absolutely loved this idea. And if you're into science fiction with fantasy and YA, I highly recommend this series. It was such a great series and one that I definitely would not have picked up on my own. So I'm very grateful for John for getting me these books. I absolutely loved them, even though I doubted it at first because I had no idea what to expect. It was so great. this is very rambly, and I'm sorry about this because I didn't take a lot of notes because I wanted it to be true and from my heart instead of reading off paper. Another thing that I really appreciated out of book 7 that the other books didn't have was that in the beginning, in a note from the author, he stated that he and Disney put out this contest essentially for all of his fans where they could help him write this book. He would put down different ideas, different chapter guides, and people got to weigh in on what they wanted to happen to different characters and happen in different chapters. And some of these ideas he took and put in the book, and some were like down to the sentence. And then at the end of the book, he gave them all credit, whether it was for their username or their actual real name. And I just thought that was such a unique idea. I've heard different writers say like they would have liked to have done that, but their publishers didn't let them do that, or they didn't think of it in time. I haven't heard of someone actually doing that besides this author, and so that was really, really unique and exciting. So overall, as a whole for this series, I think I give this 4 out of 5 stars. There were some books that I enjoyed a lot more than others, but overall I really enjoyed this series, and I'm not sure if I would do a reread of it, but if anyone else is looking for a good YA, this runs kind of youngish. At least the first couple books are very young, but another thing to appreciate about this series is the characters run the series. The writer is writing as if he was the characters, as if he was a teenager himself, and that was something I could really appreciate, because a lot of times in YA books or middle grade books, you don't get that. The adulthood of the writer kind of overrides the children narrators, and it doesn't feel as young as it should. So that I could really appreciate also. So anyways, I'll stop rambling now and let you get back to your reading. That was my series review for the Kingdom Keeper series by Ridley Pearson. 4 out of 5 stars for the series as a whole. And tune in next week for another episode of Books My Boyfriend Gave Me. Keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back. Bye.